Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. Speaking of upsets, you know where I'm going next. Oh, I'm going to our buddies in the Big Ten. That's right. And by the way, before we get into the Big Ten, I want to give you guys on social media a ton of credit because I was one of the guys hyping up the Big Ten. I was one of the guys saying it's one of the best conferences I've ever seen. There's no nights off. Anybody can beat anybody else. Michigan's a championship contender. Illinois is a championship contender. On and on and on and on and on. And you guys on social media said, Torres, you're doing it again. You're overrating them. They stink. They're always overrated. I didn't listen to you, and congratulations to you. You were right. I was wrong. The Big Ten freaking stunk, okay? And as we look back on the Big Ten, they had 9 teams enter the NCAA Tournament. They had a grand total of 1 make the Sweet 16. They had a 1 seed lose in round 2. They had a 2 seed lose in round 1. They had a 4 seed lose in round 1. And in total, 4 of their teams were beaten by teams that were ranked lower than them in this NCAA tournament. And so when I look at the totality of what happened to the Big Ten this year, I have to ask one question. And I think I know the answer. Did the Big Ten just have the single most disappointing NCAA tournament, regardless of what Michigan does? 9 teams enter, only 1 team even makes the Sweet 16, and they had to hold on for dear life against LSU. Is it possible that we just witnessed the most disappointing effort ever from one single conference? And I got to be honest, I think the answer is yes. I think the Big Ten just put forth the most disappointing effort ever in the history of the NCAA tournament. And I don't even think that's debatable. I think when you look at this Big Ten, again, it's what I said a minute ago. This was supposed to be a historic season, and that's not just my opinion. That was backed up by how the NCAA decided to seed these teams. The Big Ten became the first team in the history of college basketball with 2 number 1 seeds and 2 number 2 seeds, Michigan and Illinois both earning 1 seeds, Ohio State and Iowa both earning 2 seeds. 3 of those 4 teams are out before the first weekend of the NCAA tournament is over. And like I said, when you look at the top 5 teams in that league that were all really good, 4 of them are out. All 4 lost to lower seeded teams. 3 of them lost in all 4 of them really lost in catastrophic fashion. Ohio State as a 2 seed losing to a 15 seed, Oral Roberts. Purdue losing as a 4 seed to a 13 seed, North Texas. Iowa getting destroyed by Oregon as a 2 seed, Oregon was a 7 seed. Illinois losing to Loyola of Chicago. And so, again, it goes back to why the upsets happen. I just talked about the upsets, and a lot of you are asking me, why was the Big Ten so bad? What happened? What do we need to know? Why did it not work out? And again, I think there's a few reasons why. I think, first of all, I do think there were some weird circumstances that led to some of these teams being upset, right? First of all, we have to consider the fact that some of these teams just lost to teams that they were supposed to lose to. Rutgers, say what you want about Rutgers. Don't think I've mentioned Rutgers one time on this show. Rutgers was a 10 seed. They beat a 7. They lost to Houston. That's how it's supposed to go. Credit to Rutgers for playing as hard as they did. Credit to Wisconsin, who I have crushed time and time again. I thought they played about as good of a first-round NCAA tournament game as anybody, crushing North Carolina, destroying them. And I thought they played Baylor pretty tough on Sunday in the second round. So there were those teams that did play well. And I do think there were some unique circumstances. I still believe that if Michigan was fully 100% healthy, I think that's a team that could compete for a national championship. Not an excuse, not blaming them, but when you lose your second leading scorer to injury, and he's not playing in the tournament, there isn't a team that could overcome that if that happened and still be at 100%, certainly not at a national championship level. Illinois, I will go to my grave believing that they entered this tournament as the second best team in the NCAA tournament. It just so happened that they played a Loyola Chicago club that I think I mentioned it a minute ago. I don't even know what I'm talking about on this show right now. It's about 1:30 a.m. Eastern time as I'm recording. They played a misseeded Loyola Chicago team. Like, Loyola Chicago should not have been an 8 seed. And I'm not going to defend Illinois because I do want to credit Illinois Chicago real quick. I crush my girl sister Jean left and right. I stomp on her. I never stop talking about her. I must be obsessed with her or something. But listen, Loyola Chicago was the better team. Better coached, better executed, had a game plan, and were phenomenal. They deserved to win that game. But I also think Illinois kind of got screwed with the bracket because that should not have been an 8 seed. That should not have been a team that they played in the second round. Now, if you're a number 1 seed, it doesn't matter. At some point, you got to beat good teams, not making excuses for them, but I think that's the reality. So I think, 1, you had some teams that lost to teams they're supposed to. 2, you had teams like Illinois that just kind of got an unfortunate draw. But the other part of it, and I know it's what you guys are waiting for me to tell you, is that some of these teams were just overrated. Like, I can't defend it. I can't argue it. I can't fight it. I can't find analytics to back it up. Some of these teams are just flat out overrated. Take Iowa. I liked Iowa all year. I thought they were pretty good. I had them in my Elite 8. I know you don't care about my bracket, but I'm just using it as context to set up this conversation. I thought Iowa was a really good team. When you get destroyed by a 7 seed in your bracket, it means you just weren't that good. Oh, by the way, that 7 seed, never forget, that 7 seed didn't even play an opening round NCAA tournament game. Oregon's game against VCU got canceled. They didn't even play an opening round game. And so when I look at that, there's nothing else to say other than that Iowa was overrated. There's nothing else to say other than that Ohio State, which, oh, by the way, finished 12-8 in the Big Ten, entered the NCAA tournament 21-9 overall. They probably just shouldn't have been a 2 seed. They were not a 2-seed caliber team. Again, it goes back to what I said a minute ago. Because we had no out-of-conference metrics to determine this stuff, basically they were probably misseeded. Purdue, good team but not great. And I do think that plays into, in my opinion, why the Big Ten struggled beyond just the weird scheduling with Illinois versus Loyola Chicago or just the fact that they were overrated. I do think it does come down to how these teams are built and how these teams are structured and how they try to win games. And it was funny because after the Illinois game, and I don't know that I agree with it, but I had a good buddy in the Big Ten just say, dude, we can't keep trotting out these teams and trying to win like this. And what he meant was, and I don't think Illinois was a good example, because if you look at the history of the NCAA tournament, look, you can pick apart this, that, metric, whatever, blah, 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 blah. You got to have pros. You got to have NBA players. You got to have difference makers to actually win this national championship. I mean, you could go back to Virginia 3 years ago. 2 years ago, the last NCAA tournament that was played. We think about Virginia as this slow, plodding, boring team. They win the national championship in 2019. They had 3 guys drafted in the next NBA draft. 2 of them were first-rounders. I'm blanking on DeAndre Hunter, Kyle Guy, and I'm blanking on the other guy's name. I can't think of it off the top of my head. It's driving me crazy. But they had 3 guys drafted off that team. Villanova, I believe, had either 4 or 5 guys drafted off their 2018 national championship team. And so, oh, by the way, that's why I do think I will go to my grave believing, by the way, that guy's name was Ty Jerome. I would have never gotten that. Ty Jerome was the 3rd Virginia player from a couple years ago. But I bring it up because that's why I believe that Illinois could have won the national, because they got real NBA players. Like, I would assume it was going to be a top 15 pick. Kofi Cockburn is as good as a college basketball big guy as you're going to have. I think there's other guys on that team that will get cups of coffee in the NBA. It's why I've liked Michigan throughout this season. I think they got at least 3 pros on their roster. Franz Wagner is definitely a pro. Hunter Dickinson is a pro. I think Chaundi Brown is a pro. They're 6 man off the bench. And so you got to have those difference makers to win at this level, to win and compete for national championships. And when Illinois lost, my buddy texted, he said, we just don't have good enough players. And you look at how these Big Ten teams are built, and I'm not saying anybody should change how they build teams. Like if you're having success, if you're making $3 million a year doing it your way, and you're going to the tournament every year, and you're having success, and you're getting paid, and I'm sitting here in a 1-bedroom apartment in California, you do you, because you're winning the game of life. But I'm just telling you, I'm looking at it from the bigger perspective of why are these teams not winning? And it's like, you need difference makers, and a lot of these teams don't have them. You look at Ohio State. Like, I like Ohio State. They were a fun team to watch. But what did I tell you guys all year? I picked Arkansas to beat them in the bracket because I said, look at them. They don't have a single difference maker on their team. They don't do anything at an elite level. They got a couple really good college guards. They don't have anybody great. Their big guy, E.J. Liddell, their center is 6'8". You can't win a national championship with a 6'8" center, not unless you shoot like 44% from three like you're Baylor. Same with Purdue. Purdue's a really good program. How many guys they got in the NBA right now? I can't think of many. There might be one or two, but even Carson Edwards, who was great for them 2 years ago in the NCAA tournament, he's not playing in the NBA right now. And so to me, when I go to the Big Ten and I look at why they're struggling the way that they are, I think it's a couple things. I think, one, a couple teams just got screwed with seeding. Illinois, I still believe, I will go to my grave believing they were one of the 2 or 3 best teams in this tournament. Michigan got screwed with injuries. You got a Rutgers, a team like that actually played to its seed. But then you got a Purdue. It's the same thing every year with Purdue. They're really good. They win a bunch of games in the regular season. Then they run into somebody great in the NCAA tournament, and they just don't have enough talent. Ohio State, it was the same thing this year with Chris Holtmann. It's funny. I think you can actually make a football analogy here. And you guys know I love college football. Remember when Jim Tressel was at Ohio State? And Jim Tressel, and I've used this analogy before, but Jim Tressel, I always used to say, Jim Tressel used to build teams that were good enough to win the Big Ten. They'd win the Big Ten every year, go 11-0, 12-0, 12-1, whatever it was. Then they'd get to the national championship game, and what would happen? They'd get curb stomped by Urban Meyer's Florida Gators. They'd get curb stomped by Les Miles' LSU Tigers. They just get destroyed by everybody they played in big bowl games. And when Urban Meyer came in, the difference was Urban Meyer said, no. I'm recruiting like an SEC school. I am recruiting not to win a Big Ten championship. I'm recruiting to win a national championship. And again, you look at where Ohio State has gone for its football players over the last couple of years. This isn't just a little regional, we recruit Ohio and Michigan kind of program. Top 2 receivers this year, Garrett Wilson from Texas, Chris Olave from California, Justin Fields from Georgia. Top offensive tackle or offensive guard, Wyatt Davis, first-round pick, is from California. They got difference makers all over the field from all over the country because Urban Meyer went out and said, look, guys, we're going to win. We're here to win national championships. We're not here to win Big Ten championships. We're here to win national championships. And I do think to a degree that is what some of these basketball programs are doing. I think Michigan recruits to win national championships. They got the number 1 recruiting class in the country coming in next year on top of everything they've done this year. Illinois has pros. They have difference makers. Orlando Antigua, one of the best recruiters in the country. But then you look at Purdue. They look like a nice, good Big Ten team that's going to go 26-9 in the Big Ten, and they're going to lose in the second round. Ohio State, it's the same. Iowa, I hate to say it, I love Luka Garza. He's probably not even the best NBA prospect on his team. It's probably Joe Wieskamp. It's probably C.J. Frederick. And so I don't think there's anything else to say other than that this conference was overrated the entire year. And I think you do have to kind of look at how some of these teams are built, the players that they have, because, man, I'm telling you, you flip on these games. Look at the difference between the type of player and the type of athlete Oregon had versus Iowa when they played. Look at the difference between an Alabama as a 2 seed versus an Ohio State as a 2 seed. And you can't tell me that Alabama had an easier draw than Ohio State, and that's why they're in the Sweet 16. Because Alabama had Iona and Rick Pitino, pretty good freaking head coach. And then on top of that, they had a good Maryland team today. So I just sit there and I look at the Big Ten, and I just think that it's kind of an almost a come-to-Jesus moment for the Big Ten in terms of they got to figure out what they're doing here, because I'm not saying that some of these programs will never win, but I think that there's a reason that they've gone 21 years without winning a national championship. The last one was Tom Izzo and Michigan State in 2000. They get to the NCAA tournament. They just don't match up with these elite teams and these elite programs. Sometimes you don't get lucky. Sometimes you have bad breaks. But a 21-year drought, and we're going to get to 21 years this year, that is not a coincidence. That is something that's wrong, and that's what's going on with the Big Ten.